What do you think we should be asking ourselves about the person we want to date? You know, because it sounds like we want to have every box ticked of like, they have to be perfect, and they have to be funny, and they have to be rich, and they have to be good looking, and they need a good education. And but what should we really be asking ourselves before we start dating someone?
How are my personal insecurities going to ruin this relationship?
Ooh.
Yeah, I think that's the first and foremost conversation to have with yourself.
How are my insecurities going to ruin this relationship?
How are my personal insecurities going to ruin this relationship?
Why is that the question we should ask ourselves?
Because we go into a relationship almost blind to our own wounds, and they resurface in the relationship, and we blame them for not providing the medication of a wound that existed before we met them.
That's so true. Wow.
Yeah, so what I mean by that is, say, for example, you grew up financially insecure and you meet a partner who's actually really nice to you, but he might not be able to soothe all your financial insecurities. You immediately think he's not good enough. Or you go into a relationship being addicted to pornography, and then you meet a woman who's actually just at your right level, but you're so used to a hypersexualized, promiscuous woman that you find her boring. Or you go into a relationship not being able to communicate, and then you meet somebody else who's not also communicating, and you don't voice your concerns. So I would say, ask yourself, how are your insecurities going to ruin this relationship? And how do I create a buffer so that doesn't occur?
So when we're aware, because a lot of us, we go into a relationship not thinking where we have insecurities or that we're broken.
Yeah.
We're usually like, well, the previous relationship didn't work because of them.
Yeah.
It was their fault, or they did this, but really it always comes back to us. We chose something, we didn't see something early on, we let something slide, we didn't create a boundary, we abandoned ourselves, we didn't communicate consciously, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We let things slide too often, but we don't take a look unless, for me, there's enough pain to say, okay, here's all the stuff I don't like about me. Here's all my insecurities, all my baggage, all my trauma, all my challenges. The reason why I keep causing pain in relationship, why it doesn't keep working, is because of me.
Yeah.
Whoever the person is, right?
You're the common denominator.
You're the common denominator.
Yeah.
So once we take inventory of our personal insecurities, how can we then create a buffer going into a relationship so we don't self-sabotage?
We make sure that we are trying to heal those wounds without expecting that person to break their back to help us heal. So what I mean by that is, if I know I have an issue with jealousy, I'm trying to work on it, but at the same time, the person doesn't have to break their back to make sure I feel soothed. Okay, I pick consciously, I pick really well because I know that's a wound of mine, but I also learn to embrace and trust the process. Now, when you go in wounded and expect the person to provide you medication, but you don't even tell them what disease you have, we are then going to punish them for everything they do.
Oh my gosh, that's the worst feeling.
Honestly, and I've done it many times.
Yeah, you've done it in relationships.
Yeah, of course.
I've had that experience myself in relationships. It's not fun.
Unfortunately, you go in expecting them to be the healer or the doctor to a wound that you didn't create, but you don't even tell them your diagnosis. And as a result, it's destined for failure.
And they're not the expert at healing that wound.
And they didn't cause it.
And they didn't cause it.
They didn't cause it.
Why do so many, I'm not going to generalize, but it seems like a lot of women that you hear about with content online.
Yeah.
Why do we see so many women causing frustration in their relationship when they start dating a man based on a wound that someone else did, not the man in front of them?
Because we've created a generation of narcissistic women. And what's happened is the rise of social media and the rise of online dating and the rise of feminism has taught women that they are not to blame for any poor choices. Every poor choice is glamorized. So if you want to be a sex worker, it's great. If you want to post in bikini pictures online, it's fine. If you want to be with it, every poor choice is glamorized, and every internal reflection is seen as gaslighting yourself. So they've even got terms for internal reflection to prevent it happening. And so what will happen is they are trained to not reflect on themselves because we've been told we've been oppressed for so many years. Now it's time to make sure we project. And so we don't take any accountability. And as a result, when we get into relationships, if we don't feel completely soothed all the time, he must be a narcissist. He must be a manipulator. He must be gaslighting. He, rather than I. And unfortunately, we've got an online market that caters to that wounded woman, that caters to that entitled woman, and caters to that narcissistic woman. And it's so wild to me that so many women talk about narcissism, but the society today is just catering to narcissistic women. If I post a picture online, a bikini picture online, there's nothing my husband can do that could compete with that level of accolade.
Attention.
Impossible.
The compliments, the attention, the messaging, the you're so sexy and beautiful, and all these different things from thousands or potentially millions of men
around the world
who have money and all these things.
Yeah, and there's nothing he can do. He can't post online and get the same reaction. And more so, he can't give me the same level of validation. Oh my gosh. So what's happened is we've created a setup in society that means men have to compete with a level of validation they can't compete with. And if they go online, if they join Tinder, that night they can have so many more options than a man can, because we've got filters and we've got all of these. Again, I really am privy to this myself. I'm a filter queen. So, but the things I can do to manipulate male validation,
to get more attention from men,
just soothe myself and to remind myself I'm above this. I don't need him. I can replace him. Is something men actually can't do. So they have to rely on pornography for that. They replace us with pornography, and we replace them with likes and comments on social media.
Wow. How did this happen? Like, why do you think, is this a values thing, a lack of values thing? Is this okay, if I feel wounded or I feel some type of trauma, I need an emotional release, and so this makes me feel good, and then it's just a slippery slope into more and more? How does this start, and when does it end?
I think it comes from the fact that we've created a culture that whenever there's a problem, there's a temporary solution that doesn't get rid of the root. So what I mean by that is, if there's a problem with intimacy for men and they're not getting women, there's pornography. If there's a problem of low self-esteem in women because they don't have meaning and purpose, they can post a few pictures online. We've created a way of solving problems that doesn't get rid of the root. So we're always seeking highs. And the problem with highs is they come with lows. So you end up having more problems, more low self-esteem, and then seeking bigger highs to get that kind of back to neutral state. So I think the problem comes with problems being solved by seeking highs and a real focus on kind of values that are very empty materialistic values. So you are a beautiful, high-value woman if you're really, really beautiful. And you're a high-value man now if you are really, really rich. But there's nothing to do with connection and intimacy that now gives us status. And I think that's come from social media mainly.
Where does this lead over the next 3 to 5 years with this narcissistic, society, I guess, that's been built in this way? What happens for people in relationships? Are people able to find intimacy and connection and stay committed and be actually happy in a healthy relationship, or is it only going to get worse?
It leads to intense and pervasive loneliness, unfortunately.
Really?
And it probably will only get worse. Unfortunately, until we wake up to the impact of technology, both on men and women, it's going to lead to a complete identity crisis, external kind of extrinsic values that don't benefit anybody, which then manifests in depression and loneliness, self-inflicted depression and loneliness.
Thank you for watching this video. If you want more inspiring clips like this, make sure to click right here to subscribe and click right here to watch that next video that is specific to support you in your life.